Okay, let's jump right into this explainer and trace a totally fascinating 2,000-year artistic journey. We're talking about an art form that somehow survived the rise and fall of empires, major shifts in religion, and maybe most impressively, the unrelenting Indian jungle. We're going to explore the incredibly rich tradition of Indian mural painting, which is really this continuous, unbroken thread of artistic evolution spanning all the way from the 2nd century BC right up to the 19th century. If you're a fan of art history, ancient architecture, or honestly just the sheer willpower of human creativity, you are absolutely in for a treat today.
Our starting point is essentially a cinematic cold open. Picture this. It's 1817. A group of British soldiers, led by a local village boy, are hiking through the wilderness. They're actually tracking a tiger, and the trail leads them straight into a wild, completely overgrown ravine. They pull back the heavy jungle branches and are just totally stunned. They find themselves staring up at this gigantic, ancient Buddhist sculpture. Without meaning to, they had just rediscovered the Ajanta caves. This massive, sprawling complex of spacious prayer halls, entirely covered in breathtaking murals that had literally been swallowed by nature and lost to the world for centuries.
So to understand how these ancient masterpieces even survived to be found by those soldiers, we're going to cover 4 key areas today. 1. The science of fresco secco. 2. The Ajanta Golden Age. 3. Southern dynasties and temples. And 4. The later regional empires.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the science of fresco secco, focusing on those ancient techniques.
To really grasp the unique chemistry and the sheer backbreaking physical labor that went into making these permanent architectural wonders, we need to get our vocabulary straight. Let's start with the ancient Sanskrit word for this exact art form, piti chitra. The ancient texts actually make a very clear distinction between miniature or canvas paintings and these massive murals. These weren't portable, they were executed directly onto rock-cut architecture and structural temples. The art was fundamentally, permanently tied to the sacred space it inhabited.
And this is where we see a major geographical split in how art was actually made. You're probably familiar with frescobuono. That's the Italian wet technique, where the pigments sink deep into damp plaster. Think Michelangelo in the Sistine Chapel. But ancient Indian masters developed something different. Fresco secco, a dry technique. They'd mix their powdered colors with vegetable substances and apply them to a wall that was completely dry but specially treated. And honestly, this dry method is the real secret behind their incredible longevity in such a harsh tropical climate.
The prep work for this was, frankly, grueling. Can you imagine the layering involved? First, they mixed potter's clay with cow dung, straw, and natural fibers just to create a thick base coat to level out the rough cave stone. Once that finally dried, they added a thin coat of fine white lime plaster, which became the actual canvas. The artist would then draft the whole composition using burnt cinnabar lines, fill it in with an undercoat of gray terra verte, apply the natural colors, and then carefully restate the drawing with a dark line. And the final touch? They gently rub the entire painting with a smooth stone to give it a rich, protective luster.
So these artists weren't just painters, they were basically master chemists. Every single thing was sourced straight from nature. They extracted brilliant, lasting colors directly from the earth. Garika gave them these deep, rich reds. Nili provided vibrant blues. Haritala yielded yellow, and Kajala gave them stark black for the outlines. And the genius part? To keep these powdered minerals sticking to the wall for thousands of years, they used a natural binding media called Vajralipa. It is an absolute marvel of ancient engineering.
Now, as you can probably guess, their toolkit was incredibly specialized. They had the korchaka, which was a large brush for those broad color washes. For drafting the precise initial outlines, they used very fine bamboo rods. But the most delicate work? That was reserved for the tulika. This was an ultra-fine brush actually made out of squirrel hair. Just imagine the precision required to use that brush for a ritualistic process called unmulana, which literally translates to opening the eyes. That was the final, incredibly careful touch where the master painter gave the figure its soul.
Let's move into Section 2, the Ajanta Golden Age, where we see these breathing figures come to life.
Stepping straight into the caves of Ajanta, we are hitting the absolute pinnacle of early Indian classical art, spanning from the 2nd century BCE all the way to the 7th century CE. But this wasn't just about throwing paint on a wall. There was a deep spiritual preparation involved. The painters weren't copying real-world models. They were pulling these figures entirely from their imagination and devotion. By chanting a dana mantra and deeply meditating before even picking up a brush, they actively tried to pour their own soul into the subject. The result is so masterful that people still say the figures look like they are actually breathing.
So what exactly makes the Ajanta style so iconic? Well, it established a highly painterly quality that served as the gold standard for centuries. Especially in Caves 1 and 2, the mastery of human and animal forms is just unmatched. They perfectly applied the Shadangas, which are the 6 strict canons of classical Indian art. The walls are literally alive with Jataka tales. These are stories of the Buddha's previous lives. There's a stunning depiction of a 6-tusked elephant splashing in a lotus lake. And the finer details are wild. Masterpieces like the Bodhisattva Padmapani are adorned with splendid, intricate jewelry and pearl tassels that look shockingly real.
Okay, on to Section 3, Southern Dynasties and Temples. Let's look at the march of time.
Traveling rapidly through the centuries now, it's fascinating to track how each empire added its own unique signature to the mural tradition. It's almost like passing a baton from one massive empire to the next. The Ajanta style moves into the Deccan Plateau with the Chalukyas in the 6th century, continues with the Rashtrakutas in the 8th, hits an unbelievable peak with the Cholas between the 10th and 12th centuries, and carries right on through to the mighty Vijayanagara Empire in the 14th century. We are truly looking at an unbroken chain of artistic heritage here.
It's a pretty amazing coincidence that we started this whole explainer with British soldiers tracking a tiger, because the story continues with a great southern king who was literally named the Tiger among Painters, Chitrakarapuli. This was the ferocious title earned by Mahendravarman. He ruled the early Pallava dynasty, and he didn't just fund the arts, he lived them. Under his patronage, we see beautiful, continuous stylistic ties back to Ajanta, specifically in Jain cave temples. The graceful treatment of the figures heavily mirrors that golden age.
But styles don't stay the same forever, right? Here, we see the evolution happening in real time. When the Rashtrakutas established their power, they carved the magnificent Kailasa cave at Ellora right out of the living rock. The murals on the ceilings depict incredible scenes like the dancing Shiva, but the artists here did something totally new. They started drawing eyes and angular noses in a very specific 3/4 profile. This was the exact pivot point where the aesthetic began to shift away from pure realism and into the highly stylized forms we see later in 12th century manuscript paintings. Down in Tanjore, at the Brihadishvara Temple, there's an absolute treasure house of Chola art. These murals feature soft, subdued coloring paired with incredibly strong, emotionally expressive line work. But what makes these Chola paintings so remarkable is that they were actually hidden. For generations, these original Chola masterpieces of dancing celestials and powerful depictions of Shiva were completely covered up by additional layers of paint added by later dynasties. They were just waiting in the dark, and their rediscovery entirely unlocked a new understanding of South Indian painting.
Which brings us to Section 4, the later regional empires, and the big shift from painterly to sculptural.
As we move into these later centuries, the artistic style transitions pretty dramatically. We lose some of the flowing, painterly qualities of Ajanta, replacing them with heavily ornamented, sculptural details. Starting in the 14th century, the Vijayanagar Empire continued the tradition in places like Hampi, painting these magnificent processions. But the Nayaka rulers actually took it a step further. They literally painted right over history. They're the ones who painted over the older Chola art in Tanjore to update it with their own aesthetic. The Nayaka style was obsessed with elaborating on costumes and jewelry, adding this heavy, almost 3D sculptural weight to two-dimensional wall figures. Now, climate actually dictates art more than you'd think. Over on the Malabar coast, from the 16th to 18th centuries, artists in Kerala had to adapt to severe monsoons, so wood replaced stone. But they didn't stop painting. They just covered these wooden palace and temple interiors with wildly colorful murals instead. What's absolutely brilliant here is how they took the older Vijayanagar style and injected it with the high-energy, exaggerated poses of local Kathakali dancers. The result, these incredibly vibrant, dynamic scenes straight out of the Ramayana and Mahabharata.
And that brings our unbroken thread right up to the modern era. In this final historic phase, 19th century artists in Mysore started using real gold foil on the painted jewelry and textiles, which gave the murals immense visual appeal. But the craziest part is how the subject matter shifted. Instead of just mythological epics, the massive murals at the Summer Palace of Srirangapatna actively document modern history. They vividly record the intense colonial warfare happening right then and there, specifically the battles between Tipu Sultan and the British forces.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought. We've just traced an incredible, unbroken lineage of art, from the dry plaster chemistry of ancient caves to the gold-foiled walls of modern palaces. But if the wild Indian jungles could completely hide the magnificent Ajanta caves until a totally random tiger hunt in 1817, what other breathtaking masterpieces might still be out there? Swallowed by nature? Hidden in the dark? Just silently waiting to be found? It really makes you wonder. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the mastery of Indian mural painting.